But the company has announced a US-based acquisition of a company called Certon Software. Krishna Bodanapu, the MD and CEO of the company, joins us on the phone line. Good morning and congratulations on this particular acquisition. A, could you tell us the rationale? B, will it be EPS accretive? And what is the scale-up in terms of the financials of Certon as you see it?
Okay, good morning and thank you for having me on the call. So the rationale of the acquisition is that Certon has some very unique intellectual property that automates a lot of the testing and verification and validation, especially for some very safety critical industries like aerospace. So essentially what it does is it brings automation into the whole design process, and a certain percentage of the whole design process can be automated. And given the focus that is there on automation, we thought it was a very good fit for us, and that was the rationale for the acquisition. In terms of the scale-up, right now their run rate is quite small. Again, what we really acquired is the intellectual property. There is some business, but that wasn't really the underlying case for the acquisition. It was more around the intellectual property. It's a $6 million run rate business, and we see a significant potential for growth, and that's why we did this acquisition.
Well, Krishna, congratulations on this acquisition. I think the revenues in the last year were around $7.5 million approximately. In the previous year, it was $6 million. So that means they're doing a growth of around 17%. If you could give us some numbers in the next couple of years, what do you see the $6-7 million scaling up to on a per annum basis?
So I think the number will be quite encouraging. That's what we saw.
More than 10 million?
Again, it's too early to put those numbers out because it's still a very small part of our business. It would be about 1% of our business. So the materiality of 6 to 7 or 10 is really irrelevant in that sense. But we have much higher expectations of how the business will evolve, and that's why we really did the transaction.
Will it be EPS accretive? I know it's only 1%, but even then?
It will be marginally. I mean, it probably will add a paisa or two, so it's a very, very marginal EPS accretive.
All right. And in terms of margins, you'll have said that it's low double-digit EBITDA margins. Currently, you're doing 13 to 14%. So just to understand this small segment of your business, what kind of margins are they doing? Is it 11, 12%, or is it in that 13, 14% range itself?
It's 12, 13%, so it's about the same.
All right.
You keep talking about, the potential of the intellectual property that you've acquired from Certon. Give us a sense of that, right? How should we expect it to translate into the kind of work that Cyient does?
So if you look at a lot of the work that we do around verification and validation of software for aerospace and other safety critical applications, this IP, the way it works is that because of how the design itself happens and the intellectual property gets embedded in the design, when you come to the verification phase, which is typically the largest, the most sort of voluminous part of a project, you can take out certain test cases and so on and so forth. So say, instead of spending 100 hours to do testing, you can get the same testing done with the same sort of certifications for 70 to 80 hours. So you can take out about 20% of the testing process. Again, testing typically is the largest part of this. So what we can do is to certify a product, for example, using this intellectual property, we can do it, say, 20% more effectively than if it was a purely manual process. So where it really plays into is, obviously there's a lot of focus on automation, and this is a very, very good example of how this automation is coming to play in a real sense.
Okay, so let's hope with this acquisition and the automation that it brings in, the company's overall margins also increase once it gets integrated with the rest of your clients. Thanks again for joining.